hemp is 450% more absorbent than straw. It lasts 2 to 3 times longer. So when people start testing it and seeing how their animals love it, it's great for chickens. It's great for rodents. It's great for snakes. It's great for turtles. I mean, so we've just now got approved to sell our products on Amazon, and of course we saw our sales.
Hey guys, it's Mandi with Global Hemp Association. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I'm excited about the opportunity to build a relationship and connect this supply chain. I mean, after all, that's why we started the association. Our association was built on the foundation of connecting supply chain, building relationships, and helping you grow your business. Anyone from farmers, manufacturers, and distributors, people that are passionate about the supply chain, and those creating products selling into biofuels, plastics, textiles, construction, and building materials. But I'm really excited to be back. We just got back from an exciting conference up in DC that the National Industrial Hemp Council put on, and I was really impressed with what they were doing. And Gary, I'm curious what your opinion was, and I'd love to give them a shout out because we were just talking in the back that.
Sure.
It was together.
Great conference. It was on predominantly Monday and Tuesday, ended yesterday around noon, and it was. It heard a lot of different things from a lot of different parties. Everybody there is obviously very pro-hemp. And yesterday was more of a bureaucratic session with the FDA and USDA. And quite frankly, that's part of our problem in this business is that we lack sufficient governmental guidance, and that creates a lack of capital. And so there was one lady that spoke, I think pretty well to the FDA fella about basically them sitting on their hands. And so it's probably going to take some kind of congressional legislation to create the guidelines that we all need. We need goalposts in this business to help us to determine how to manage and work it. So, but all in all, it was a great session. And after I gave a little speech impromptu on Friday, I mean, I think I had 20 business cards given to me. So it was a great networking event.
Absolutely. And the quality of people, I'm excited to follow up with everybody. We made great connections. And of course, as we do this, I get to know so many people. So attending those events is even more exciting because I get to know people like you even better. Anyways, so talk to me a little bit about what's your background, Gary? Where'd you come from? Before you got into the hemp industry, what were you doing?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm speaking to you from Dallas. I live in Dallas, Texas. That's our company's headquarters is Dallas-Fort Worth. We actually have an office in the Cowtown area. My background is I was a banker in my early years for almost 10 years. I specialized in energy lending, and my first business was oil and gas. So I have actually taken 3 companies public on the New York Stock Exchange, all in the energy sector. All those companies have been built and sold. And I was actually building my 4th.
Oh, we lost you. You cut out for a second. You're okay.
Okay. Yes.
After the 4th company.
Yes, somebody tried to call me.
That's okay.
So the 4th company I started, which was about 4 years ago, Trump had just signed the Farm Bill. And as most of you know, oil and gas has kind of gone out of favor, being fossil fuels, the climate issues and the carbon issues. And I got to thinking I've raised about $7 billion in my career on Wall Street. So I have a great name in that sector. And I didn't want to lose that capital raising expertise. And when I started reading about hemp, Trump signed the Farm Bill. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to make a transition. So I tell all my friends, I went from oil and gas to grass, and now I'm in the hemp business full speed. We're actually the largest hemp processor in the United States. We're based in Kentucky. All our operations are. And
processor, define what processing looks like.
Yes. So processing, basically, when the farmer grows his hemp and harvests it, which is typically done in September, October of each year. When he bags that hemp up, it's typically 85–90% moisture, and it needs to be dried. So we have huge dryers. We have a 48,000 square foot facility in Western Kentucky, Hopkinsville. And those farmers bring us that material. We dry it, we clean it, we strip it, and we get it ready for extraction. That means we pull the flower out of that plant and we get it ready to go for extraction. And extraction is where they make either crude oil, isolate, or distillate. And then the remaining portion of that plant is called the fiber and the hurd. And with that, we make products. So we just launched about 2 months ago the Rowdy Rooster animal bedding product line. We're getting ready to announce another product line to oil cleanup. We'll be announcing another one probably in the first quarter tied to kitty litter, and even another one tied to gas logs or Duraflame type logs. So we're trying to take every part of that plant and make something out of it. It's an incredible plant that has all kinds of wonderful attributes, and we're trying to figure out ways to do that. So just being in the business 2 years now, we're receiving hemp from as far away as Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina. We're basically the southeastern hemp midstream processor.
Okay, so I've got lots of questions. I've been taking notes. Volume for processing. Talk to me about what that looks like.
Presently, we have on our property about 11 million pounds, which is a lot of hemp. And we run 2 shifts, and we're processing that hemp every day. And
How many tons an hour?
There's been a tremendous amount of inventory. As you probably know, there was a lot of hemp planted in 2019 and 2020, and we're still working off that inventory that's in the marketplace. There's definitely an equilibrium. If it hasn't already occurred, it's occurring as we speak, which means that prices will definitely be going back up. But the industry as a whole has been in a bit of a downturn for the last couple of years because of the overplanting that occurred in 2019.
Okay, so when you speak about what the product you have, the poundage, is that with the flour or the full biomass, or is that for the fiber and stalk? Is that
the flour is pulled out, so the remaining is the hurd and the biomass, and that remaining, that's kind of the stalk.
Right.
The stalk, that would be the stalk, and we take that and make products. So, for instance, if the stalk had fiber, you can make textiles out of it. You could be making insulation to replace fiberglass, plastics. BMW is now using hemp in all their car panels because pound for pound is 10 times stronger than steel, and obviously much, much lighter. Between clothes, steel, you're now seeing hemp being replacing rebar for concrete. They call that Hempcrete. Fuel. So there's many segments of this business that we're just now beginning to explore that's outside of the CBD world. The CBD, again, comes from the flower. We're talking about the industrial side of hemp, which hemp is, many people don't realize the Bill of Rights is written on hemp paper. George Washington was a hemp farmer. If you read his journals from Mount Vernon, he talks about all the hemp he grew. All the ropes from the 1700s and 1800s and early 1900s were made out of hemp. So it's not like this plant hadn't been around a long time. It was just made illegal, deemed a controlled substance in the late 1930s because the DuPont family and the Rockefeller family did not want it to compete with all their other products. So it was lumped in with marijuana. It is not marijuana. In fact, we just did an article that got published in USA Today about 10 days ago, differentiating marijuana and hemp. They're sister plants, and they have tremendously different characteristics. And most people here in the U.S., unfortunately, don't realize that they are 2 total distinct plants.
The way they're grown, right?
The way they're grown, and it's got to do with THC. The THC levels is that's the hallucinogenic part of marijuana.
But it is a slippery slope. You have to admit that once you get over that one little fine line, it's now classified as something completely different.
Well, the hemp plant in itself typically doesn't have much THC. And you just got to be sure your genetics are proper so that you don't have greater than 0.3% THC, which again is a hallucinogenic. We very, very seldom see that.
Nice. So I want to ask some questions about your harvest and things like that also, but I've got a question about your kitty litter, right? There's a lot of discussion or about your animal bedding or the products, right? Going in, there's a lot of discussion or hesitation about the consumers using it, right? What are some of those obstacles and what are some of those false narratives maybe that you're hearing? I know one is like
just a lack of knowledge. The hemp is 450% more absorbent than straw. It's lasts 2 to 3 times longer. So when people start testing it and seeing how their animals love it, it's great for chickens. It's great for rodents. It's great for snakes. It's great for turtles. I mean, so we've just now got approved to sell our products on Amazon. And we, of course, we saw our sales increase dramatically. But it's really just people learning that, oh, wow, this is a product that is even better and available now. Because historically, if you wanted any form of hemp product, it had to come internationally. It had to come from Europe, had to come from Canada, from China. But now this is USA, homegrown product. It's eco-friendly and has tremendous positive characteristics. So it's really educating the consumer that this product is available and has a great opportunity to meet needs that they never thought or dreamed of.
How does the processing affect that end product, right? Going into this, the animal bedding and into that entire sector. Like I look at zoos as opportunities. There's lots of different, for animal bedding. How does the processing, what really needs to be known if others or you are processing or the end consumer, right? Is it dust? Is it mold? What typically are we?
Yes. Mold has been a big issue for lots of other bedding products, especially straw. And so dust has been an issue. We've had to make some refinements in our process to mitigate the amount of dust. We've done that. So, it's a learning process. But
so what size also? Like, are we looking at a specific size of the?
Very small. I mean, we go machines that basically grind it up and it makes it, a very small size.
Okay. So I have another, I don't know if this is even your field or somebody else probably on your team is the engineer doing this, but there's been a lot of discussion about the way things are processed and how they absorb. So if the fiber, if the herd itself is crushed, does that affect the quality?
Yeah, we basically grind it up. I mean, if you look in the super sacks, it's stalks, and we go through grinders and get the material down to a very small very small particle so that it can be spread out and used for the animals. So we took some to a show in Atlanta and brought some chickens, and it was unbelievable. These chickens just, would make their beds, and you could tell they loved the material. So those are the kind of opportunities that we see.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm excited about it. And volume wise, I'm curious, acreage, for the need in the industry and the market available, what's acreage that we would potentially need? Understanding you've got a lot left over, right? Because you're using.
Well, we're using it up. And we're obviously trying to find other, products that we can make. We're basically plowing brand new territory. I don't think today, as I sit here, I know even a fraction of all the opportunities that exist using this product. I'm very excited about the oil cleanup. You see when an automobile accident occurs, you'll see a fireman out there throwing, kitty litter or something out with respect to, cleaning up that oil. And that is something that I just saw the other day. I'm thinking, man, how great it would be to have this product, used with respect to cleaning up wrecks and gasoline. And then you look at service stations, all that is very exciting.
Okay. So, are you still there? I think it cut out a little bit. Awesome. There's a couple comments that I want to address real quick. And I think it's a great point because there's this big misunderstanding in the industry about the hempcrete. Hempcrete is non-structural, right? Where it's insulative, and it's not a replacement for concrete necessarily, right? People ask me all the time if I can connect them to people for a hempcrete driveway.
Concrete has nothing to do with it. It's the filler of the concrete. You have rebars in that filler of the concrete to make it stronger, and they're putting hemp in there instead. The same reason they're using it for automobile panels to replace steel is being used for concrete. And I'm getting contacted by concrete companies 2 and 3 times a week going, hey, how can I get some of your fiber? I want to test this. So
so what is that? I guess let me ask you, classification. How do you define if it's it's a concrete with a hemp additive compared to a hempcrete?
Well,
what is that as industry? What does that look like for
hemp fibers in the concrete that reinforces its strength?
Right. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I guess I'm asking if anybody else has any
R&D phase. It's not really widely available yet, and it's still being researched, and concrete companies are still testing. So we don't have the final answer yet, but it's coming. I can promise you.
Sure. Okay, so future, talk to me about outside. What about this industry, being in the oil and gas industry, and especially in the energy sector? Where do you see real opportunity moving forward on, this? I think herd and animal bedding is pretty low-hanging fruit compared to real opportunity long-term. What do you see moving forward?
Well, first of all, it's amazing the parallel between the oil and gas industry and this industry. And you think, how in the world is oil and gas compared to hemp? Well, in the oil and gas industry, we drill wells to get fossil fuels, oil or gas. Here you flour is what's used with respect to the extraction. We have midstream in oil and gas, which is the gathering and processing, and we have refining in oil and gas, which makes your final products. We have extraction labs. My business is midstream, which I take the product and I reassemble it and get it ready for downstream. So it's really amazing the similarities. So if you look around this room and in the office you're in, everything in it has some form of fossil fuels in it. There's not a single thing in your office that doesn't have some form of fossil fuels, from plastics to paper to glass to phones. Everything has oil and gas. And most people don't realize the petrochemical industry uses all these fossil fuels. So if we can just begin to take a fraction of that business away with respect to new products using hemp, it could be amazing. At this show we were at in Washington, I was approached by a foreign company on textiles, and they were showing me all the fibers that they use with respect to textiles and how they want to do that. So it's just, again, we're just at the cutting edge of realizing where else is going to be. But what are the problems? You got farmers that need to grow the hemp and find a seller, and you got the buyers of the hemp that need the farmers. So this is where we're beginning to we're the conduit, we're the middlemen. We bring the farmers together, and we bring the end users together, and we're trying to take that product in genetics, grow plants that are properly seeded so that they grow the type of products we need. There's tons of genetics. We heard from at the show professors from Oregon and Cornell University about all the work they're doing on genetics and where the best plants are coming from and best environments. So we're still in the wild, wild west. We're in the learning phase of a brand new industry that has infinite possibilities. And that's what gets me excited about this business. How often in your life can you be involved in a company or a business that has the sustainability that everybody's looking for, that's eco-friendly, and that is legal now? And so it's a brand new embryonic business that it's the wild, wild west. We have no idea where it's going, but I can promise you from all the different angles I see, it has an incredible bright future.
Okay, so there's some awesome questions because I'm curious too. And Jeff, good comment that avoidance, there's the topic of the sequestration in this process, but also the avoidance as we make a transition from fossil fuels into, a plant-based biocomposite or plastic or anything, right? Biofuels. In the future, how many acres or what is your acreage going to be in order to support your business?
Well, just so you know, we're not growers, we're not farmers. We are the middleman the farmers come to. So the answer to that question is demand is going and price are going to dictate the number of acres grown. When prices are low, fewer farmers will grow hemp because they'll grow corn, they'll grow soybeans, they'll grow peas or whatever they want to grow. It's like we have one farmer from Alabama. He's one of the largest corn growers for Jack Daniel's whiskey, and he's growing quite a bit of hemp as a diversification for all the things he's growing. But the same token, that farmer has got to sell the finished product. You go on the Chicago Exchange, you can sell your corn, and you can sell your soybeans right now. The markets have not grown and gotten mature enough to create that trading capability.
How do you keep, to what you just said, right? How do you keep your supply chain filled if you have this influx of price or you're competing? And then how do we get out of that chicken and egg? What is the solution as being this connector, right? How do you, or the middle piece, how do you fulfill those end contracts or secure that for those?
Well, any business that's commodity driven has a volatility. I mean, having been in the oil and gas business for 35 years, I've seen oil as low as $11 and I've seen oil as high as $128. And it's like this, I've had. So that is all supply and demand driven. No different about the hemp business. The supply will come up when the demand increases. So when I talk about all these different potential products, whether it's plastics, it's fuel, it's steel, it's fiberglass, automobiles, clothes, whatever it is, when that demand continues to increase, then the supply will. They work in tandem. And it's just a natural economics 101. Supply will usually always meet demand because price will go up.
What do you need to do to create that demand, in your opinion? What does our industry need? Because getting out of the chicken and egg conversation is, we have to, it's critical. And with that, it brings capital, right?
One of the in Washington is more guidance from the FDA and USDA. Right now, there is virtually none. And another thing that will help this industry is clinical trials, whether it be for animals. I mean, I think hemp as a feedstock for animals has an incredible future. And right now, it's illegal to feed hemp to animals. Oregon State University is doing a complete study that was funded by the government on that, and that's going to take some time. So you're beginning to see countries like over in Europe, England and France, Germany, where big pharma over there is recognizing the opportunities that CBD and hemp has for pharmaceuticals. And so you're beginning to see some transactions occur. That in itself will create demand for CBD. So if you go to the internet today and order a CBD product, there's probably at least 100 or more products available. and you have absolutely no idea what's in that product because our government has not established guidelines for those products yet. And so that is a problem because if you are buying a CBD product and it doesn't work, you go, this is crap. You get a good one and it works, it's wonderful. So there's a lot of CBD out there that doesn't have in it what they claim to have in it. So
we have that regulation. Yeah.
Is to make that better. And it's unfortunate that our government's moving so slow in establishing those guidelines. When you go and buy cereal and you look on the back of the cereal, you know exactly what's in it. That doesn't exist in a CBD product.
Right. Okay, so there's a couple comments. Daniel Bigby, I've got to give a shout out. He's talking about his product or one of his Hempcrete products that they've got, or whatever we call this definition of concrete with hemp, right? But Hempcrete is evolving. Another company I founded with a partner, Sean Davis, Hemp GPC, right, has a concrete with over 7,000 PSI using geopolymer derived from a hemp itself. I think that that's exactly what you're speaking to, right? How advanced it is. What I was trying to say is that difference in like the definition of a Hempcrete to a hemp insulation. And I'm curious, what does that look like? And I'm sure ASTM and some of these standards organizations will kind of define that definition, I guess.
They will. I mean, they'll have to be they'll have to be laboratory work done. They'll have to be done.
And I'm sure
guidelines will. It takes time. And remember, this industry is 2.5 to 3 years old. I mean, we just got the Farm Bill at the end of 19. So all this is evolving. That's why I keep calling it the Wild Wild West. We don't time.
We don't what? You cut out a little bit.
We don't know what is going to be the opportunity tomorrow, next week, and next year because it's all happening in real time. It's a plant that has incredible characteristics and lots of different industries. And all those industries are looking for ways that they can get involved because it's eco-friendly and it has sustainability. Okay,
so tell me about this, right? When we talk about sustainability, there's a lot of discussion about sustainability this week and a lot of question about, how is it measured and what is that carbon footprint, right? Coming from your industry and your background, what is the future around, or your projection of the future around the carbon and the opportunity involved there?
Well, there's no question that carbon is going to be a word we hear a lot about in our future. Everybody's looking to be carbon neutral. All the industries are. Obviously, fossil fuels is a big carbon emitter. And so I think there'll be some opportunities in the hemp sector where we will have carbon credits that other companies will be seeking because of the sustainability of this business. And so those carbon credits can be some of the incubators that we need with respect to the capital to grow and develop and do the R&D that's necessary to come up with new products. So carbon credits will continue to be a very hot topic for the sector. At this point, we don't have it yet, but I think it's coming.
It's getting close, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked earlier about the investment and the need to grow the industry, right? And in order to grow, we need the capital. And there's a lot of reservation on the capital side that I hear in, well, we can't build these facilities if we don't have the input, right? What does that conversation look like on the finance side and funding side? And what do we need to bridge that gap so that we do have more capital opportunity?
That is a great question. And that's one of the biggest problems with respect to this industry is the lack of capital and investment. Most of the investment today is coming from private enterprises. There's some institutions that have invested, but these are the kind of problems. Hemp and marijuana, as we've said, are very different. Marijuana has been approved both medically and recreationally in a number of states. Hemp is approved nationally, but if you were to go down to your local bank and open up an account and you say, I'm in the hemp business, 80% of those banks would say, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. Their legal departments don't understand it. We talked about that at the conference, is that most banks do not want to get involved in the sector because it's too dangerous. The federal laws of being involved in something illegal are atrocious for a financial institution. They can lose their license, board of directors are personally liable, so they don't want to take the risk. So again, understanding the differentiation between marijuana and hemp. We have a bank, fortunately, that's involved. There were a couple banks at the conference in Washington that are involved. So
shout out to Westtown Bank.
Westtown, and I'm actually working with them right now on another project. So, so banking is an issue. Let's talk about the stock market. If you want to buy stock in a hemp company, we're one of the very few, because Wall Street has not embraced this yet. You can be a marijuana Canadian company traded on the OTC, but you can't be a marijuana Canadian company or US company on NASDAQ or NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, because marijuana is illegal. Hemp, you can be. So we're the first company. We went from OTC pink sheets to OTCQB, which is a higher level. And we've just applied for NASDAQ, and we hope to be listed on NASDAQ around the end of the year. So we'll be the first pure play, publicly traded hemp company in the United States. And hopefully we can help, drive some of this new investment to this sector. Once marijuana is approved nationally, which we all know it's coming, is it 2 years, 3 years from now? I don't know, but it's definitely coming. 67% of the US population wants marijuana approved. So it's going to happen. So once that occurs, then marijuana companies and hemp companies can be public, and there you have access to billions and billions of dollars. The banks are comfortable. They're not going to get in trouble. They don't care whether you're marijuana or hemp because they throw it in the same pot. So we're having to plow new ground, showing the market we're hemp only. We don't touch marijuana, nothing greater than 3% THC, and we're public. So we are truly trailblazers in the Wall Street area. Fortunately, I got a lot of experience there, and I've got banks willing to help me, and we're going to accomplish that. But we're an anomaly, and there needs to be more. We needs to be. I wish there was 3 or 4 or 5 hemp companies trying to do this. We're the only one right now, but it'll come. Once we have success, market sees it, there'll be others coming. So having access to capital in a very fragmented new business that has all the banking problems and has all the
regulations,
the marijuana and hemp is the problem. And it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so great question Steve has here. Can you comment on whether or not you're looking at carbon tax credits for your business model? And please elaborate.
Not in my business model yet, but it's something that we really are watching closely. We will definitely be on the forefront of trying to obtain those carbon credits once it gets better defined how our industry can participate. And we heard a little bit about that at this conference in DC the last couple of days, but it's still not defined enough yet for us to even think about putting it into our projections.
Okay, so again, Daniel, he's got an awesome platform, and I think that this is where blockchain and tokenization really becomes a conversation around this track and trace of carbon credits, because they are so fragmented and awarded based on so many different variables that how do you know what the value of the credit is, all the way down the supply chain? And I think this is where it becomes a real opportunity. So
you mentioned blockchain. I'll tell you one of the things that we're looking at in our business and in the, if you're in crypto or blockchain mining or what have you, that is a huge electric electricity user. All those machines use tremendous amounts of electricity. So there are plants around the United States that are called biomass plants that burn wood waste to make electricity. So we sent a bunch of hemp off to some labs to have it tested to see how would hemp burn compared to wood waste. And the B2 levels were basically the same. So we got to thinking, well, why not try to find some biomass plants, feed them with green energy, being hemp waste, and make electricity for blockchain. So that's one of the innovative things that we're exploring as we speak. We're out looking at plants all over the US. And then as a public company, we would not only have the green hemp exposure, but then we'd have the crypto exposure. So that's just one of the
That's where I think I'm a few weeks ago was turned on to this energy, like the circular economy that's available around the gas or the energy that's created from the biochar, from these other processes that then feed right back in either to the auto or the power or the battery or the mining, the data centers. It's just awesome. It's cool.
It's now good news, bad news. There hasn't been a new biomass plant built in the United States in 20 years. Why? Air permits. EPA, they don't want you burning wood waste and emitting that into the air. Also, natural gas prices have been very low, which makes it very hard for a biomass plant to compete. So we're actually just having to look at existing plants that already have the permits that we would just replace the wood waste with a cleaner fuel being hemp. But anyway, it's
capture that. I mean, that's a topic that comes up a lot, right? Is like, how do we keep that from happening, and how do we prevent that burn off or that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's been the problem with the coal industry.
Yeah.
With coal emissions, acid rain, all the things you heard about over the years. So it's one reason our coal industry is basically for the last 20 years. Natural gas has replaced a big part of that. Hydro obviously is a big part of that. And then of course, renewables being wind and solar. But I think we've learned, especially here in Texas, that wind and solar is not the answer to everything. We had a polar vortex last year, and most of us here in Dallas lost our electricity for weeks on end because there wasn't enough power to meet the demand that was caused by the cold weather. So anyway, all these are, I think, interesting ideas. I think we believe that this sector has so much future, and we just are touching the surface. So it's going to take entrepreneurs, it's going to take angel investing, it's going to take risky investing, and we're trying to do it in a smart way to make money while we're going along.
Okay, so how does Zev, good question, how does hemp compete with cost of wood waste?
Very competitive, because if you'll recall, the last couple of years, the cost of wood has gone up significantly. And so if you were to build a new home today, that's one reason housing prices have increased so much, is to replace that house with wood is very expensive. So competitive, and especially we have an oversupply of hemp. So burning hemp waste versus wood waste is very competitive today.
Interesting. Okay, good questions, Evan. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. But what about biochar? Have you looked into biochar?
I have not. I could not comment on that.
Okay. I was actually kind of surprised that wasn't more of a topic, just because of the carbon.
Yeah.
Again, I hear, there's a lot of bad biochar. If we think our industry is pretty broken, I understand so is that industry.
The thing you got to remember in any business, especially one like this, you got to pick your horse and ride it. You can't be everything to everybody. And so we try to pick products where we have lots of supply and that can be easily transformed to a finished product. So, you just can't do it all. And so you got to pick your horse.
Yeah, understand. Peter, good to see you. I don't know if you're still on, but always great to have you join. Okay, I like the advice you just gave. Somebody new getting into the industry, what advice do you have? What are some things they really need to consider? And then on the flip side, as investors are coming in, what questions or things should the investment side be looking at or asking? Because they need education. We've got to get them to a spot where, yeah.
Okay, great questions. First of all, remember, this is a commodity-driven business. So as in any commodity, you're going to have volatility. So I used my oil and gas background, having lived in an environment of volatility, and instead, when I decided to get in this business, I spent a year, maybe a little over a year, driving all over Kentucky and North Carolina and South Carolina, visiting CBD companies, extraction labs, farmers, co-ops, drying facilities, to determine where did it make most sense for me to enter the business. And the decision was made to go into the midstream, which again is an oil and gas terminology, because it is not commodity price driven. We get paid a fee for performing a service. No different than you taking your clothes to the dry cleaner. You pay a fee to have your clothes dried, and they give it back to you. The farmers bring us the hemp, we dry it, clean it, strip it, and we give it back to them. So that in itself mitigates risk, because hemp can be out the roof or in the doldrums, and you still got to do the service to get it to market. So that's why we did that. Now we're making the next step of looking at extraction labs, because we now believe that that's another area for us to have a lot of control, where we actually take that flower and make the crude oil isolate or distillate, which is used for the CBD products. So our goal eventually is to be vertically integrated, seed to sales. Now, will we ever be farmers? Probably not. We'll probably work out contracts with co-ops or farmers. We need this amount of hemp. This is how we want you to grow it. These are the seeds we want you to use, and we'll give you a contract. And that's something the farmers don't have. And I think that's something they will be excited about when we're able to do that. We will obviously eventually get into the CBD products. Right now, I'm not excited about ingestibles for humans because, again, the FDA and USDA has given us no guidelines. So cosmetics or dog or pet CBD or lotions, those I'm okay with. So those are the kind of businesses that we're seeking. So any business is about mitigating risk. And so we decided to mitigate that risk by being in the fee income oriented side, which isn't dictated by the commodity. So if you look at what's happened in the last couple of years, that was a wise decision because the price of the commodity has dropped like a rock. Now it's stabilizing, and now I'm probably willing to take some risk and own the commodity. We're actually doing trades on our processing plant in Western Kentucky where we're taking hemp and we'll process it for a percentage of the finished product. You know, I wouldn't do that a year or two ago, but I'm willing to do that today. So it's all about having some experience, you know, some gray hair to know what you should do and shouldn't do, and knowing, you know, having had 3 companies on Wall Street that were publicly traded, kind of know what the investment community is looking at. They're wanting to mitigate risk as well. So, you know, you want to be here for the long term. What will happen to us 2 or 3 years from now? We probably won't be around. I believe that when marijuana finally gets approved, there will be just an onslaught of M&A activity in this business. I mean, if you look at what's just happened in M&A in our business in 2021, through the first 6 months of 2021, the M&A transactions in the U.S. exceeded the full year transactions of 2020 and 2019. So there is, you know, great opportunity, and some of those are public transactions, some of those are private. But So answer your question, how do I get in the business? I would pick something that you find is got a real, something special. I got a premium, you got a product that's selling well, or you have a something that differentiates yourself from the rest of the crowd.
Bingo. Yeah, I think that that's a key piece in this, right? I get a lot of new companies wanting to come into the industry, and they have what I would say a normal or standard, ethanol or CO2 extraction method, and nothing really special about their product, right? And so I'm with you. And I shouldn't say special about the product, because I think the branding has a lot to do with it, but it's got to come back to the quality of what we're providing as well. And so
you gotta separate yourself from the crowd. Yes. And there's a company that I met at the show that came up to me. It's looking for a bunch of fiber and herd, and I'm not gonna say who they are because I really like their business, but they had a product that was really different. I'd never heard of before, and they seemed to be on the ball. So that company I'm targeting, I'm looking at hard. And all the companies that, came up to me the show, they're the one that stood out that, hey, you guys got a great idea, and let me see if I can help you.
Awesome. Great question, John. Can you speak a little bit or discuss how you priced your company when going public, and how did your advisors address the valuation efforts?
Great question. I have always gone public the non-traditional way. And what that means is I've never done an IPO. I've only gone public by taking over other public companies and doing what's called a reverse merger. Mm-hmm. So we went public 2 years ago by finding a real estate company based in Denver, a penny stock was 6 cents a share. I looked at their historical financials. My lawyers looked at, their filings. They were clean, very small, and we could cut a deal. So my shareholders, when we did the reverse merger, we ended up with 90% of that little public company. You can't use the word shell. That's a bad name with the SEC today. It was a publicly traded pink sheet company. We changed the name the day we did the reverse merger, completely changed the business. Nobody with that company came with us, established a board, and then started making acquisitions. So our market value today is around $100 million. And, we're able to use our stock in our acquisitions. So typically our acquisitions are half stock, half cash. We will go raise money when needed be on the open market in what's called a secondary.
Okay, good question. Now I've got all kinds of rabbit holes I want to go down as far as the banking and financing. So earlier when I asked what are those questions, that maybe investors should be asking as they get in, can you give me a couple, if I were to put together a frequently asked questions or things to know?
Well, it's pretty hard to, I've got 35 plus years as a businessman. So when I told you I spent a year on the ground, I call it boots on the ground. I looked at, 35 or 40 companies with some of my associates. And I would walk out of a meeting and go, those guys won't be around in 90 days, or those guys won't be here in 6 months. How do I know that? That's just years of experience doing deals, knowing people, understanding businesses. And, unfortunately, I was correct. I would say about 80% of those companies are gone today. So this business isn't conducive for a lot of debt. So it requires equity. That means risk capital, investors willing to risk. So you got to have a good story. You got to have a good business plan and tenacity. You cannot be successful in any business without having tenacity. The ability to keep after it.
Grit.
When you're going is tough. And my first oil and gas company, I started at age 27. And the first 3 years were absolutely pure hell. My mom was my first employee, and I'd come to work and she'd say, honey, you sure you just don't want to shut it down today? And I'm going, nope, I am not giving up. And if you stay at it long enough, there will be something that comes along.
Yes.
And if you're not in the game, that opportunity is just going to pass you by because you don't have the ability to take advantage of it. So you got to have the fortitude. I have friends of mine here in Dallas that have worked for really successful companies that wanted to go out on their own. And they did not have the backbone or their stamina. They lasted 90 days. They go, I can't stand it. They're used to having a paycheck every 2 weeks, and they could not stand it. There were years I didn't take a paycheck, you know?
I know the feeling.
You got to have that mental fortitude and mental desire that I'm going to stay in this. And if you do that, I can promise you, you will be successful.
The why has to be more than money.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, somebody gave me some really good advice a long time ago. She said, you better write your why down and make it visible. And she said, you better be able to go back to that every day when you're having your hard days, because that's what will drive you through this. And
it takes a mental capacity that honestly most people don't have. So you got to have the drive, the fortitude, the desire, you got to be bloodthirsty and to be an entrepreneur. And so it's not for everybody. And that's what makes the world go round.
So talk to me about the team, building a team, right? As we're building infrastructure for an industry that hasn't been here before, right? Nobody really knows what they're doing or what to expect or what's going to be best or what regulations are going to come down. What does your advice look like, or what was your strategy in building a team?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, you're not going to build a team with people with a lot of experience in this business, because the business has only been around 2.5 to 3 years. So you're bringing people from other industries that have experience. Today, 2 of my key employees have worked for me on and off for 12, 15 years. So I know their work ethic, they know me, and we work well together. So 2 of my employees have been long-term in other businesses that I've had. When we made our acquisition of Halcyon in January, which is our cleaning stripping facility, 2 young men came to work for me that were the primary architects of that company. And they're smart, young MBA guys that wanted to, work under my wing, if you will, learn a lot of the things that I've been teaching them. We've been together now since January. Here it is November, and we've had a great time. I love helping them and teaching them, and I give them stuff to do all the time, and they're just energetic and want to learn. And so they're smart guys and do well. I brought on a general counsel. I actually checked around the market and found a guy that was not just a lawyer at a big law firm. He had been an oil and gas company and knew, a little bit about the risk associated with being in a small enterprise. So it's just finding people that have the desire and really have the love for a business like this. Everybody that works for me loves hemp, thinks hemp's the best thing since sliced bread. So you got to have that desire and love because that causes you to continue to look for new opportunities. And my job as a CEO is, I give my employees enough rope to hang themselves. I'm not a micromanager, but I'm always there. They have a problem, they call me. Every day I'm a firefighter. I'm just putting out fires here and there, here and there, here and there. And, I think that's why they like working with me, is that I let them grow as people. I let them grow in their careers, and I reward them. When I sold my first oil and gas company, 37 of my employees became multimillionaires. I'm a big believer in sharing wealth. I want them to have ownership, and I'm very liberal with stock and options and stock awards, and we may not pay the highest salary, but you will never get rich on salary. Never get rich on salary. I take that to heart. You get rich, you got to have equity ownership. And that's what I'm very proud of doing, is giving equity ownership to people that gives them a chance to truly build something personally for their lives and their families.
To invest in, right? It's easier. I used to say this all the time. So I owned a restaurant for a little while. It was a mistake. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I give credit to everybody that's successful at it. We grew, our partnership divided, long story short, but it was the hardest work I have ever done. And I say all the time, it's much easier going to work at 6 a.m. and getting off on at midnight when it's for yourself, even though pay sucked at the moment, right? And so I think that by doing that, it gives you something, that autonomy and purpose. And
well, there's nothing like, being in control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
Basically.
Or at least having a say in the opinion and being respected. Well, very, very cool. Okay, so
back to your question on how to get in the business. This is a great industry. It's going to have a phenomenal future. There's all kinds of ways to get in it. So do your homework, investigate the different ways to be in the business, and pick something and go for it. I mean, it's going to get better and better every month, every year, and it will become a multi-billion-dollar industry, and maybe one of the largest in the United States in the next 10 years.
I concur. What's your favorite amount of information that you got this week? And I have to give a shout out to the young lady that stood up and asked some pretty tough questions about the FDA and the ruling on the drugs.
I'm impressed with her. I wanted to kiss her.
She did so.
He set that FDA bureaucrat so straight. It was so funny. I couldn't believe it. But
and realistically, these companies that are spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to bring the data that we need, like her point is very validated.
And comments were so typical meaty mouth bureaucrat that didn't say anything, and she just called him out, and it was great. One of the guys that I follow closely that spoke is Frank Colombo. He's a data analyst for Viridian Capital. And I get his data every week and I read it. He's got one of the best data links about our industry. And so I enjoyed hearing him speak. We had never met personally and got to see each other. I felt like the first morning meetings were quite good, talking about the various businesses. I also really appreciated the Cornell University professor. We have talked, I have him personally a couple times. We're looking at actually possibly contributing money to that university. They are doing a phenomenal job in genetics, and we would like to be a better part of that. So it was a really well done. Patrick did a great job putting that together.
The whole team, just the way that it was, and the content. I liked when Julie stood up and said that she really expected a much heavier cannabinoid market, and it wasn't. It was very industrial focused, and so that was pretty exciting.
But that's what surprised me, is that it was very industrial. Here in Dallas this weekend, called the Southern Hemp Expo. It's at our convention center. My company is the key sponsor. I'm speaking on Saturday at that, and I'm speaking predominantly on industrial hemp. I will be there, and I will see you there. I fly out on Friday, so I was actually going to mention that in the beginning when you said that you were in Dallas, and I was like, oh, let's connect there too, because I'd like to shake your hand and say hello. So I'll make sure that I'm there. I'm actually having a party at my house after the convention, so I'll be sure you get an invitation.
Thank you. Well, I'll hunt you down. And so how do people reach out to the company if they have questions, if they want to get in touch? Very
active website. It has a ton of information. We do a lot of work on the social media front. We actually have a social media coordinator that works for our company, because one of the things we're trying to do is educate the public. And of course, raising money 5 and 10 years ago is totally different than today. I mean, you hear about Reddit, you hear about, all the different channels of raising capital from retail investors that didn't exist, even 3 or 4 years ago. So we've had to change our thinking as a public company as how to get interest in our stock, how to get interest in our company from investors. And so we have a very, very active social media front. We probably put 2 or 3 things out a week that are little clips. This is a little longer than some of those, but couple-minute clips, just educating the public. So that's part of our job is being public hemp companies. We got to educate people.
I want to help you here, Gary. We do 8 to 20 of these. I was talking about this week at this conference, that the amount of content that Global Hemp Association puts out and our intent to connect people, outside of these meetings and to really put media in, common education. But yeah, I'd love to have you involved more. I'd love to get your voice out there. I'll work directly with your media company or your young lady that's doing social media. And
I think one of our banks wants to sponsor us to be a member of your organization.
There you go. There you go. That's even better. Okay.
All right.
Perfect. Well, then we'll get involved. And if there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to reach out. Everybody else, don't hesitate to reach out. If you need anything, you can find membership information and all types of content on globalhempassociation.org. And then from there, you can get to our community platform with a request for invitation. There's a few thousand hemp companies or companies servicing hemp industry, lots of content, and all of our transcribed meetings and notes and stuff are also in there. So, okay. Other than that, Gary, thank you very much. And we'll see you, I guess, Friday or Saturday.
See you this weekend.
Okay. See you later. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining.